Happy Monday, everybody. I hope that you've been enjoying this class so far. If you haven't already, I'd encourage you to take the time to fill out the anonymous survey that I linked. I've also posted it on this announcement. The feedback that you give is really helpful for me to know what's been working well for you, if there's any ways that I can change content in the course or better support you in the class. Especially as an online class where we don't meet face-to-face, doing what I can to support you in terms of content and feedback is really important to me, so please take the time to fill that out if you haven't already. Otherwise, a couple general notes to know about the class. First of all, your course activities and discussions are assignments that I will grade and provide feedback on within a week that they're due on, so expect feedback on your course activity from last week by this Wednesday at the latest. If you ever have any questions on the feedback that I give you for those assignments or want me to discuss that in any more detail, let me know. In addition to that, you do have a couple assignments that are coming up in addition to your weekly discussion/course activities and quizzes. The two assignments are your argument diagram and your topic paper. The argument diagram is coming up toward the end of June, so that June 28th due date is one you should have on your radar. For that assignment, you should use the content from Chapter 4, in particular on the Tolman model, to analyze an article. That article that you should use is posted on the front page of Canvas, so don't use your own article. Use the article that I asked you to analyze that's listed on the front page of Canvas. So you'll use the Tolman model in order to map out and understand the parts of that argument. So Chapter 4 that we'll be talking about today is really important to complete that assignment. The second assignment, and the guidelines for that are posted on that assignment guidelines page, is your topic paper. So you'll be, in this topic, taking a topic that you find to be personally significant or a topic you think is important that you want to get into more detail about, and you'll be writing a topic paper in which you talk about this topic, unpack some of the major elements of this topic, and do some initial research. After that, you'll do an argumentative essay where you take a position on that topic and support that position with various pieces of evidence and sources. And then at the very end of the class, you'll complete a refutation block where you will respond to and refute your own arguments that you made. So you'll take on a different perspective than the one you took on in your essay. So you should choose a topic for that argumentative essay that you feel comfortable arguing multiple sides on. So I also discourage folks from taking on topics that are perhaps too much discussed in the news or a little bit overdone. A lot of times topics related to abortion, marijuana, and gun control or gun legalization are the ones that tend to be overused. It's not that you can't use those topics, but if you do use them, try to be a little bit more specific within that topic, or try to make sure that you're really showing a new or thoughtful angle on that topic. So with that being said, let's get into Chapter 4. Chapter 4, I think, is one of the most important chapters in the book. I think it's one of the most useful in terms of laying out the various parts of an argument and understanding how argumentation works. So Chapter 4 gets into this idea of the Tolman model. And the Tolman model is a way of mapping out and thinking about various parts of an argument. Some of those parts are things we've already discussed so far, and a few parts of this are a little bit new. But what I want you to do is think about an argument like an arrow. So think about it not like a actual like mouse arrow, but a bow and arrow. So when you have an arrow, right, you have the end, the little triangle, the point of the arrow. You should think about the point of the arrow as your claim. It's literally the point of the argument. The claim is the statement that you're trying to get adherence to. So we've talked a little bit about making claims, but there are three major types of claims that you can make. Claims of fact, claims of value, and claims of policy. So claim of fact would be something like the sky is blue. A claim of policy should be like the US federal government should repeal the Affordable Care Act. And a claim of value should be we should value liberty over personal security. So those are examples of claims. They're the major arguments that you're trying to get across. But if all you do is make claims, you're not going to get somebody to support your argument. They're going to want to know why they should abide by your claim. So that's where grounds come in. So grounds you can think of as the kind of feathers or supporting things on the end of the arrow, right? So you've got your point over here, you've got your support or your grounds on the other side. So the grounds are the major pieces of evidence or support that you use in order to substantiate your claim. So for example, you might say, the sky is blue. That's my claim. My grounds might be, because we see through the way that light reflects and so on, the color blue in the sky is blue. In addition to that, you have your warrant. If your claim is your point and your grounds are the feathers, the warrant is the wood that connects those things together. It is the thing that links your ground and your claim. So to go back to the sky is blue, right? Because being able to see with our eyes means that we can perceive something as blue, sky is blue. So it connects your grounds to your claim. Another example might be, we should repeal the Affordable Care Act. Because the Affordable Care Act has created situations in which it's harder for employers to be able to provide health care, grounds, because employers being unable to provide health care makes health care access more difficult, claim we should repeal the ACA. So if you wanted to take that position on the topic, that's how you could use both grounds and warrants to support your argument. So the grounds are more about the support, and the warrant is more about explaining how that support fits your overall claim. A lot of times folks mix up the warrant and grounds just a little bit, so try to make sure that you're getting a little bit more support or explanation there. So in addition to that, you have those three parts, but then three other parts of an argument that emerge at other points. One of those parts is the qualifier. The best way to think about the qualifier is thinking, what is this arrow made out of? So you could have a really sharp metal arrow. You could also have like a rubber arrow that you're using in a kid-friendly setting, right? So the qualifier might say something like, all the time, sometimes, most of the time, in these certain situations. It sets the parameters for when the argument is true. And if you want to make a reasonable and effective argument, then you do want to set some parameters. Try to avoid making, right, always or never claims, because those are oftentimes pretty difficult to be able to support. So you might say something like, most of the time, qualifier, the sky is blue, unless, of course, it's sunset or something like that. So that's a way you can use the qualifier to give a range of situations in which you could use the argument, which makes the argument more reasonable to the decision maker. Another thing that you have is the usage of backing. Backing is additional support that you can provide for your grounds and your warrant. So you might say, for example, going back to the claim about repealing the ACA, that there's additional support, including report by a company like a group like the Wall Street Journal that talks about the negative economic effects of the ACA. And you might cite and bring in that study in order to provide further support for your grounds. So think about backing as just adding in a layer of detail and explanation to either your grounds or to your warrant. The last thing is a reservation or a rebuttal. So we talked about the qualifier. Oh, and by the way, going back just a minute, you can think about the backing as kind of reinforcing the feathers or reinforcing the wood, making it a little bit more sturdy. Finally, you have what you can think about as the reservation or the rebuttal. I like to think about the reservation or rebuttal as like the bow itself that you're holding to fire the arrow. So maybe you hold it back a little bit and wait. Maybe you fire it like with as much strength as you can, right? But the reservation and rebuttal is explaining in what contexts your argument might not be true, or recognizing the ways that your argument is not necessarily 100% correct in every instance. So you might say, we should repeal the ACA unless we can come up with a way that allows employers of small businesses to have a particular exemption. So that creates a scenario in which you can agree that your argument would not be true, or you could change around your argument. And that's reasonable because oftentimes when you engage with decision makers, right, they are going to think about various options and hear other points of view. So if you can show that you acknowledge a different perspective, but your argument is still holds true and is still correct, that's a really good way to engage in persuasive argumentation. So those are the 6 parts of the Tolman model. So you can think about your claim, warrant, and grounds, along with your reservation and rebuttal, your qualifier, and your backing. In addition to those 6 parts, there are various argument types that the chapter talks about that fit under the Tolman model too. One of those types is the usage of logic or logical reasoning. So you can see, for example, the all men are mortal, Socrates is a man, therefore Socrates is mortal, is an argument that could be mapped using the Tolman model. So something like a syllogism is a way that you can map an argument. If A equals B, B equals C, then A equals C, right? So you could say, claim Socrates is a man, backing or grounds, right? All men are mortal, and so on. A couple other argument types that fit under the Tolman model. One is argument by generalization. So you might take a specific phenomenon and say, I don't like parties. That's the claim. You could provide support that says, I went to this party and I didn't enjoy it. Therefore, you generalize and say, I don't really like parties. So a couple other argument types, argument by cause. You might say that something has caused something else. So you might say, claim, there's a fire happening outside. Some warrant or support, somebody had a campfire and they didn't put it out, or something like that. So you can make the claim that something causes something else. An argument by sign, right, is providing some sort of evidence or signifier that something is true. So a really good example of this is if you get pulled over for speeding, right, the flash of your speed limit that they do, right, that evidence, that is a sign that you sped. So they might use that as a basis of saying you need to slow down, or they give you a ticket or something like that. An argument by analogy is when you take 2 kind of similar situations and you explain how they have some things that are pretty similar to them. So you might say, not liking parties, I went to this one party with this one friend and I didn't enjoy it. I think this party is going to be pretty similar. So by comparing and making those things analogous to each other, you can make the claim you don't like parties. The claim by authority, so that's making a claim that a particular authority figure or a source is especially credible when it makes a particular argument. So you might say that the New York Times put this out or put out a position on this topic. Because this is seen to you as a credible source, we should agree and abide by what that source is trying to say. So argument by authority suggests that the authority of the subject is particularly important and is worth following. So that's some of the major types of arguments that you can see. You can see that defining arguments is also used too. So for example, if you're trying to say that we should define something like, there's a lot of controversial topics about definition. What is the definition of marriage? What is the definition of a child, or what it means to be alive, right? So the various disputes over defining those things, including the usage of legal and medical terminology, are also ways that you can see this kind of argument being used as well. So the Tolman model, there's a lot of different parts and a lot of different types of arguments that can be mapped under that model. But I think thinking about the Tolman model like that arrow and thinking about it as a way of visually representing and unpacking the parts of an argument makes this chapter really powerful and really effective. So best of luck for your activities and assignments for this week. Again, please complete that sheet if you haven't already for feedback in the course. Otherwise, have an awesome week and let me know if you have any questions.